If you have to guess on literally the first question on the section, that is okay. But this myth is the first 5 to 10 questions are the most important to my score. So I get a lot of students who think that because of the way the test is designed, they really need to get the first 5 to 10 questions right. And because they think this, they end up spending so much time on these first 5 to 10 questions, spending 5 minutes on an individual question. And while they might perform well in those questions, they end up really running out of time, and that causes them to struggle later in the section. So what is the truth? I'm going to go ahead and kick it to Eric to explain this one.
Yeah. So as you can see here, the first questions do not determine your score, right? They're no more critical than any of the other questions that are you're going to see throughout. And that's mainly because it's a computer adaptive exam. And after another myth here, we might show you what we mean by that. Look at tips as we're moving through this as well. As Erica said, don't get so focused on trying to get every question right, and don't get so hung up on a particular question. At a certain point, you're just going to have to try to narrow it down and then guess and move on. And again, we'll show you that the worst thing that can happen to you all is, if you just get it wrong, fine. You just get a little easier question. You'll get that one right, and you'll be right back to where you are.
I mean, exactly that. Know that this is false and that it's okay to miss questions in the first 5 to 10. I try to tell my students that it's more important to get your timing right from the jump than to get all of these right. So if you have to guess on literally the first question on the section, that is okay. Just don't dig yourself a hole, because I find that when students are really, really behind, one, they don't finish the section, which is actually quite bad for your score, or they get so stressed out about their time management that they end up getting in kind of a mental funk, and their performance isn't as great on the rest of the section, which is more than 5 to 10 questions. So this is a myth busted. Approach the first 5 to 10 questions as you would the rest of the section. All right. Moving on to GMAT myth number 4. And this is one that I get often as a follow-up after I've shown kind of okay, if you get this one wrong, then okay, next question, a little bit lower difficulty, and then it moves up and down. And students go, so does that mean if I'm taking a test and I get a question and I go, wow, that was so easy, does that mean that I got the previous question wrong?
So yeah, not necessarily, right? So we do come things that maybe, are kind of interesting, experiences that we have, right? So we may be changing content on you, right? And that is type of content that you perceive as easier, right? So now all of a sudden you think, oh, this is an easier question. I must have gotten the last one wrong. And the problem with that is that now you may be throwing yourself off, because you may be thinking, am I not thinking about these questions correctly, and that sort of thing. Nope. It's just, again, it's some content maybe that you perceive as a little bit easier. The other little piece, which maybe you don't hear about as much, is that we have to test our items in a live environment, right? So you can only do so much testing, through, various, ways to figure out where a particular item should be scored, or within a particular range of scores. And so ultimately we have to put some of those questions into a live environment, meaning they're going to show up on your exam. Not a lot, just a few here and there, right? And so these are non-scoring questions. They will not impact you at all. It might be that you get a question where, 80% of people that test at your level normally get this question right. So of course you're going to then perceive that as an easier question. Yeah, most of the time, true.
I love to hear you say that it's most of the time true. Typically, I say to my students, the algorithm is so complicated, and maybe it is true in most cases, which is interesting. The thing that I say to students is that you're not a psychometrician. If you're up in your head, if you're thinking those things, it's distracting you from the thing at hand, which is working on the problem. And so regardless of if you got the previous question wrong or right, high chance you're just incorrect in your interpretation, because you're not a psychometrician. But even if you're right, it doesn't matter. What's done is done, and it's not helpful. It doesn't serve you in moving forward in that section.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, you don't want these sort of things that are distracting you as you're moving through and letting your emotions get to you, right? So, I mean, I think that's one of the things, why on the practice exams that you can get through the free software, that you have the option of flagging whether or not you're guessing on that particular question. Now, you can't do that on the real exam, right? But when you're going through the practice exam, again, because there's gonna be a lot of times you're like, I think I got it, but I'm not 100% sure. Is it between this question or that question or that answer? Then you can guess. And what you'll see at the end is you probably do pretty well, right? So all of that is to help you build your confidence.